are thrilled to be here with you today. 14 months ago, we made an announcement with Cisco that we thought was a game changer. And the two companies coming to work together to solve a problem that some of you may not fully understand. So I'm going to spend just a couple of quick minutes talking about that problem. And today we are very proud to announce that because of our close work together that we have not only launched the product into the marketplace, but are working with our first customer at BC Hydro. And Dave, thank you so much for being here today and talking to us about that. And actually have further work that we'll tell you about going on in the marketplace today. So many of the announcements that you read about at DistribuTECH are quite frankly, really pushing the envelope about what the smart grid is going to do for people, what is possible to do with technology. And what we sometimes overlook when we read those types of announcements are, first of all, the incredibly hard work that it takes to industrialize that type of technology, but the kind of infrastructure and the sound information architecture that it takes to actually reliably and truthfully deliver that technology over a long period of time. And there has been too much sort of early adoption talk and not enough serious conversation about what it takes to genuinely, reliably deploy and support these types of complex networks, and to do that work economically. And we've recognized that challenge because at Itron we think of ourselves as being a very long-term player in working with our customers over a 15 to 20-year period. And we are genuinely concerned about the total cost of ownership of these types of systems and the ability for these systems to be extensible and future-proof. And the way that we recognized that the work that we recognized that we needed to do in order to accomplish the objectives of driving down the total cost, of reducing risk for our customers, and providing a more flexible solution was to move strongly towards open standards, to move strongly towards partnership with companies like Cisco, the world's greatest networking company, that are experts at moving large amounts of technology across a network of networks. And this was a very powerful and natural relationship for us to work together. So we made an announcement 14 months ago. Many things are easy to say and hard to do. And that is that we announced that we were going to deeply collaborate on routing solutions, on protocols, standards, joint work on the development of an open standards-based meshing technology. And many of you wrote favorably, and thank you very much for that, about that announcement at the time. It was an exciting announcement about our collaboration. But you had the good sense to say, we'll see. What's going to happen? How long is this going to take? Is it real? What can they really do together? And I think you were right to have that skepticism. Because quite frankly, to have two fairly good-sized companies collaborate as deeply as this work has required presents its challenges. And I'd like to take just a moment today to thank the extended team, many of whom are here, both from Cisco and Itron, who have been working together very, very closely over the past 14 months, and frankly will be working together over an extended period of time in the future. So if the Cisco, yes, and the Itron team members would stand up, I would really appreciate that. So we have a large group here today. I'd like to acknowledge behind these types of announcements, there are serious development commitments that are made, large teams that are working together, a strategic steering committee, project management office, all of the things that you hear about for a large smart grid deployment were actually that kind of team was required for us to partner and work together in order to get to the announcements that we have announced here at DistribuTECH. So we've made a tremendous amount of progress in the past 14 months. We are so pleased with the outcome. We think that we are materially addressing the challenges of an extensible and manageable network at high scale that promotes security, that opens the grid genuinely. It's not just about providing an IP address on a network, but really drives towards open standards at all the layers of the network so that we stimulate competition, we stimulate innovation, and we really start moving towards interoperability as we are driving down the total cost of ownership for our customers. So the project is still ongoing in the work that we have to do, but we've reached a tremendous milestone. We are working very closely with BC Hydro, our initial customer. We have been out very, very actively in the marketplace in the past year, and the concepts and the power of what we're talking about with this collaboration have really resonated with our customers, and there is more to come in terms of announcements of early field trial work that we will be doing with those customers. So with that, I'll pass it to Laura.
Great. Well, it's been a fantastic journey, and the one thing we knew from the Cisco side, getting into the market, and we work with 85% of the global utilities around the world, mostly on the enterprise side, but going into the operational side, we knew that to be successful, you have to have great partnerships. And you have to have great customers that believe in you, that have that open communications and direct feedback when you need to see change or things moving faster and in a different continuity. So we can't be more proud that, you know, in the relationship that Philip and I have built, that we have a great partnership. We can talk about the tough things and we celebrate the wins as well. And the power of the collaboration and partnership, I think, is really what breeds success. And if you think about it, the announcement 14 months ago and getting to a point where we're working with a great customer, we're in the field, we've announced our reference model and for the metering side. I'll talk a little bit more about the field area network that we've announced as the extension of that whole platform on the 17th, but it really is quite amazing to have this level of progress. But it's not just about building communications and putting boxes in to open up that data. It's really about a vision, and at Cisco we have a strong vision that this is going to be a multi-service platform to enable applications in AMI, for distribution automation, and for many other areas as the grid continues to modernize. It's about making sure that we understand the needs of our customer and what is important from a legacy and how do we make that evolution that you've got to make sure to get the value out of the technology that you've deployed. And at Cisco, obviously, we are the purveyors of IP, Internet Protocol. And it's that suite of protocols and that open, interoperable platform that we're building that will create the extensibility, the modularity. We were really excited last week, and our Chief Architect, Jeff Taft, is here today to announce our grid blocks capabilities, which is based on the reference architecture of where we believe the grid's going to go and the tiers that get created by doing that, so you can really drill down and understand architecture for security in specific areas. And I know Jeff could come up and talk for hours on that, and we appreciate Jesse, people like you and many others that wrote about that, because I do believe that that's the kind of transformation that it's going to take, and that's the level of evolution, that it's not about point products, but it's about powerful partnerships like the one we have with Itron. Is about making things more open. So while our commitment with Itron was to do that, to say, hey, let's, in this reference architecture, that will be available to others, but our commitment is there's a lot that we have to do to partner and work at the technical level to understand how we do that and deliver to the customer in an effective way, in a very sustainable way. So we're really excited about this partnership. Our teams just work incredibly well. Going through some of the bumpy times, we learn a lot more, and just excited now that we are working with you, David, and in the field, and have other early field trials that we're marching on as well. I did want to point out that our connected grid router is here today, and while I love flowers, I would have much preferred to have one of these as a centerpiece. I'm not sure I can do that lottery system to take one home with you, and if I brought one home, I'm not sure my children would know what to do with it, but this is what we're so proud of, and I think, you know, one of the opportunities to work with the customer is to understand the importance of the form factor. Cisco has been in the field for a long time. This is extending our products in the substation into the field and having capabilities like this, where we understand it's one-arm deployment, it's secure, and with the temperature ranges that we've talked about, it's just exciting to have the feedback, so that we know we're going to get it right from the start, and the mechanical form factors, and making it enabling it to be capable through Wi-Fi, WiMAX, cellular. We're not at Cisco, you know, we're not religious about the kind of technology we want to enable our customers to use the different capabilities that they're going to need in the future. What makes the field area network launch so exciting too is the capabilities that Cisco has around network management and security. Our network management solutions will scale up to 10 million endpoints. And at BC Hydro, it's going to be 1.8 million endpoints at the end of the day. So it's really exciting to look at the power of those technologies, how we scale that, how we secure it, make it resilient, robust, and extensible, as Philip said earlier. So I wanted to make sure that if you all have a chance, we've got some demos at our booth that we'd love to share with you, and there's several of the team here if you want to just ask 1,000 questions about this connected grid router. I had to sort of tug of war with my CEO because he kept wanting to pre-launch this before we launched the product, and so finally I told him, and he knows quite well about BC Hydro, that in our earnings on February 9th, that he's very welcome to really talk about this and show it. It was at our company meeting, and so we've been really excited. It was on the boardroom table with our board meeting last week. We're really excited about how do you take a ruggedized form factor like this into the utilities and look at other applications. Jesse, as we talk about connected smart cities in the future, having the communications and having those types of technologies out in the field, transportation, there's other things that will happen over time. So it's pretty exciting for us in the whole scheme of machine-to-machine and Internet of Things type of capabilities. But I think it's really most important to hear from the customer, and David, for you to share with us why the partnership's important, how it's going from the standpoint of BC Hydro, and lessons learned along the way, and we can share that with the whole community, because I think making progress is about the collaboration and sharing best practices, whether that's what we've seen in stimulus funding or what we see live in action, building the future and building a capability for the smart grid of the future. So it's just exciting for you to be here today.
It is, and thank you for that. Am I on? So I have to apologize. I've been on significant speaking engagements throughout the province, talking to our constituents, our city councillors, our mayors, customers who are pro, and customers who have questions. So on the plane ride from the middle of BC through Dallas last night, I took all my notes on my tablet, so I'll have to refer to this from point to point, so apologize. And I'm glad to be here on behalf of the electric utilities who are looking for that next evolution into the smart grid. And I'll say this is a game changer for us, and I'll tell you why. These are two significant entities on their own, two companies to contend with by themselves in their own marketplace. We brought them together for a very good reason. And being from Canada, the analogy I like to use, this is like Ovechkin and Crosby on the same hockey team. When they're healthy and when they're not suspended. I'd hate to be the opposition goalie when these two are coming down the ice at us. I always, I'm sorry, so just to introduce myself, I'd actually started this project in 2005 at BC Hydro. There wasn't much out there in terms of AMI and smart grid, and we've grown leaps and bounds. It's taken us a while and some roadblocks, but we're here. And we're excited to be here, and I'm excited to be part of this partnership. And right now I'm being asked 3 specific questions when we introduce this technology, this solution. I'm the solution architect. I'm also the manager of all things operations for smart metering project. And 3 questions I get asked is, why Itron and Cisco? It seems a little odd. What are the benefits you're going to achieve out of this relationship? And what does the end game look like for you, Dave? So the answer to the first question, why Cisco and Itron? Well, we really we're spending $930 million on 2 million meters. Do the math, it's more than most utilities will spend. We want to make sure at the end of the day, our smart metering system can support the smart grid. You walk around DistribuTECH floors and you see all the advancements in technologies. They're getting there, but we can't get there without this combination, without this architecture, the Cisco and Itron architecture. And smart grid, it's a novel concept. You can ask 10 different utility executives what smart grid means. You can get 10 different answers. So let me put it into context for what our program is about. It's really simple. It's a ubiquitous, interoperable ecosystem and intelligent data to support our future customer requirements, whether it be the electrification of transportation, electric vehicles are coming, distributed generation. All of that while we're trying to keep our rates reliable and low for our customers. That's as simple as it can be. So that's how we embarked on our project when we opened up our books, and we had some great conversation with the technology providers. So, going back when we first started this project, and we said, we want to do, and I'm reflecting back to conversation with some of the sales folks here in this room too. We had a joint solution design workshop, and there was a common set of questions coming back from the system integrators and the technology providers. And they all were, you want to do what with our system? And you want to do it by when? So that we had not only technology constraints, we had schedule constraints. We're legislated to get this in place by the end of this calendar year. most of it. Not rolling over to the full IPv6 network, but most of it. We'll get there. We'll get to the IPv6 network in all meters next calendar year. So we're a bit of a different entity at BC Hydro. We've got hundreds of thousands of devices out there, thousands and thousands of miles of distribution lines, of transmission lines. We've got 94% hydroelectricity substations all across 365,000 square miles of service territory. And this is a network provider that stepped up to the plate to deliver that. So our 2 million customers are all over 50% rock and ice, 365,000 square miles. Good luck. We are going to get there. And I know all you folks know electric utilities are risk averse, right? It's in our blood. I'd hate to be a salesman talking to me. So at BC Hydro, we're no different. So all things being considered, we needed to make sure that the technology providers, the component and the service providers that we embarked on this journey with, had to have the DNA to recognize that risk aversion. We needed to see that experience in those roadmaps. But again, another novel concept that we were introduced to. Dave, it's fantastic you want to do this with our system. Let me introduce you to our roadmap. And it was a bit scary, a bit daunting at first, but then we recognized, well, these guys, Itron and Cisco, you've had roadmaps before. You've talked to utilities and telcos, and you've seen where they wanted to go, and you've developed infrastructure to support that. That's how we got to where we are here today. So we recognized that, and that was important to us in our evaluation process when we brought these folks along with us. We've got, similar to all other electric utilities, we've got aging infrastructure. We realize that there's a lot of great technology out there that's living well in the 21st century, and we recognize the world around us has changed, so we need to take that next bold step forward, and we go slow. We're behemoths, and it takes a lot to change the entire network, so we recognize that, and again, that factors into our evaluation of technology providers. Who can help us get there, and who can help keep us there once we actually get to this thing called the smart grid? And again, both of these names, Cisco and Itron, household names in industry and academia and coalitions in the standards group that I belong in. I'm sure, Jeff, you and I have crossed paths in some standards groups there. So, we recognize they're working on the same things we're working on. It's important for all of us to recognize that. That's how we're actually going to get to the smart grid. And if any of you have been at some of the sessions here at DistribuTECH, you'll understand, and I'm proud to say that the electric backbone is a source of our economy in British Columbia. It is. Customers rely upon us. In fact, I was at a city council meeting yesterday, and one of the city councilors asked me, is this an essential service, electricity? And I had to scratch my head in terms of how I answered that, because I know where they were going with that in terms of wireless smart meters, etc. And anyway, I left that one alone. But it's interesting in terms of what customers are looking at. So I'm going to talk now about some of the benefits of the solution. So as you heard from both Philip and Laura, we're looking for a modular architecture, something where network requirements change over time. We can actually plug devices, plug new network requirements into without significant investments in a new network or a wholesale change out to networks. In that we're seeing today with some of the stimulus funds, you'll see divergence in networks within the same utility. We didn't want that. I want a single utility, and I want it to work. I want to take some of these devices out there on the show floor, and I want to plug them in and see them work interoperable with the systems we're deploying today. I'm just going to wrap up. I've got a whole bunch of other benefits that I'll talk to, but I'm just going to wrap up with talking about what's in the end game for BC Hydro. By the time we're done, we're going to have deployed one of the most sophisticated, advanced, and intelligent systems that's out there, and it's real. It's living, it's breathing. I know, I've actually got a router in my home. I was just telling Philip, in my garage I've actually got a router hanging out. My wife thinks I'm a techno geek. I am, but it's talking to my meter and it's working. So it's here. They're ready for us. I don't think we're ready for them. And I say that humorously because when we looked at the roadmap, we thought, what a daunting task for the technology vendors. And we didn't realize, well, we have a lot of work on our back-end systems to do. They've stepped up to the challenge. They've stepped up to the plate. We were down in Silicon Valley a couple of weeks ago with Itron and Cisco, and the stuff is ready to roll. So in April 28th, we're going to take delivery of our first set of connected grid routers, and we're going to start hanging them out there. And these devices are going to work with our metering system. And then at the end of the calendar year, we're going to transition over to a full IPv6 network. We're going to touch all 2 million meters. All 2 million meters are going to be traversing our network with IPv6. They're going to be wrapped, encapsulated. It's like, whenever I'm talking to the layman, it's like the Russian nesting doll. It starts off very small, and you add all the layers, and then you take some of the layers off until it's exposed to the Itron application, the Cisco network management system. So, if I had to tell our customers and our stakeholders what is the benefit, what is our end game, I would say to them, you'll no longer challenge us about the risk and the benefits of our program. And we get that a lot today, like you do in California and elsewhere. You'll no longer challenge us on that. You'll see faster power restorations to plug electric vehicles into our network. You'll have energy information like you've never had before, so make better use of the energy you're consuming today across our province. But better yet, you'll have the comfort to know that you're going to be able to plug 21st century technologies into a 21st century grid. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Philip. Incredible. Appreciate the insights. So with that, we deliberately wanted to leave plenty of time. We'd love to field your questions, your observations, and your insights. So with that, I'd love to open the floor and see if we have any questions. Where's my plant?
Jared?
Right here over here.
Michael Northern with Deloitte Consulting. I'd just like to hear you speak to how you're dealing with evolving standards in the industry. And your remarks are all great from all three of you, but we certainly are as an industry a little slower in terms of the adoption of things. There's a lot of things that we can learn from other industries, and it's great that we're getting such attention in the utilities industry today from other industries. But how are the three of you dealing with that changing landscape in provisioning this solution so that we all benefit from that related to standards?
Sure. I can start because, interestingly enough, I sit on a committee called the Open Smart Grid Technical Committee. We have representatives of all the major utilities across the industry where we're looking at the requirements that end up in IEC or IEEE or whatever standards bodies that are out there. And the reason I wanted to start is because when I recognize that I'm working on the Open Smart Grid, whether it's on the communication side or on the hand side for Smart Energy Profile 2.0 or 1.x or whatever the case may be, I see across the table from me the vendors working with us on developing these requirements that end up in these standards. And we said, first and foremost, within our project, we are an open, interoperable utility, and you have to abide by these particular standards. We're an electric utility. We understand there's an evolution, and SEP 2.0 is a great example of where we need to be as an industry, and we'll get there. And it's on their roadmap, and we're working with them to get there.
So you made reference to the fact that there are standards in many other industries, and yet the standards are not fully defined, particularly in the utility industry, and you mentioned the fact that there's evolution. So who better to work with than Cisco, who has been at the forefront of standards development in so many other industries and has made so much progress. We asked ourselves, we like to think of ourselves as a leader in our industry, but let's be real, Itron is really not that large a company compared to other large industrial providers. And so while we are represented in the kinds of standards bodies that Dave just mentioned, the influence that we as a single supplier would have in those bodies is really quite small, and so therefore the power that we can multiply our force with alignment and working with industry leaders. So from our perspective, there's tremendous value in collaborating with Cisco to accelerate the learning process of bringing their standards expertise from other industries into the utility industry and being able to align our efforts in order to act as a force multiplier in that we are very, very aligned and focused on driving standards together in a way that's most productive. And then finally to a technical, before I give it to Laura, a technical issue, which is that because these systems are firmware downloadable and have a very significant over-the-air bandwidth, you ask the question is how is it possible that these evolve, is that we have built into the foundational design the ability for the upgrading of firmware and therefore the evolution of standards and the ability to continue to update these systems over a significant period of time as the standards finally do really become clear and fully adopted.
And absolutely, and I think, you know, we believe the standards are probably with the architecture itself is the foundation of building something that you will be able to future-proof your investments and accelerate deployments on some level. It's been hard over the last couple of years as standards are evolving. There's been, you know, conflict in the home side and lots of standards bodies out there. I think, you know, the one thing that we can do as a large company that has a lot of experience in standards bodies, and maybe it's not all on the IEC side, is to drive for global standards. And I think, quite frankly, you know, we can sit here and talk about open, interoperable, IP, and all those things to future-proof investments, but it's still a slippery slope right now around the world in terms of where standards go. And the worst thing that can happen is those become balkanized, and, you know, you get the power of one big utility that may move in the wrong direction, and I don't think that's good for the market. So one of the things that we also do is an ecosystem approach when there are partners or other vendors that we work with to provide a whole solution to the customer, because it's never just Cisco. We have our partners, and some might be small companies, and others might be utilities that can't send people to standards bodies. If we are all on the same page, then we share that information, collaborate, and say, hey, we're going to cover this one, and we'll make you part of, you know, where things are going with that, how we can weigh in. Maybe we need some, you know, additional technical resources or white papers. So I think that's where not everybody can send one person to a standards body, and what you don't want to have is some of those technical working committees trying to slant something for pieces of technology that will be proprietary and lock you in. So I think that's what we're pushing for. But I would say that we're not there yet globally. I think there's very progressive minds like you, Dave, your company that are thinking about that. But we have to work together. We need to understand how all of those standards bodies come together for that whole roadmap approach, and how the collaboration will actually end up driving investments, because it's really easy for a regulatory issue or standards issues not getting resolved to delay investment. We've seen that in the whole build out of the internet and through the telecommunications companies. When there aren't clear rules of the road on policy, regulation, and standards, you miss maybe the next generation technology, or people go back and deploy things that don't scale for the long run. So it's just a critical piece of what we do. We invest in my business unit quite a lot in terms of our engineering time and resources, our product management teams focused on the standards issues, because that's really is what's going to help generate and accelerate our success. So great question.
Jesse.
David, for you implied that you had set a rather high bar for vendors that maybe was a bit daunting for some. Can you say a bit more about what was on that wish list, and maybe for Laura or maybe for Jeff, what were the most daunting challenges technically what are you most satisfied with accomplishing?
Yeah, and it's a great question, and that's why I said when we first went down this path in our joint solution design workshop with the vendors, they came back and asked us, you know, you really want to do what with our system? And I thought, we're seeing a lot of discussion about higher bandwidth, lower latency for our distribution automation devices, and at the time, it looked like we would have required a completely separate network to support SCADA and real-time operations. So the ask to the vendors, and we had a total cost of ownership and a total business value model where they had to step up to the stated business case objectives. Right? So that was a criteria for us in our evaluation process, and we said, here's a list of must requirements to have that low latent, high bandwidth requirements off one network. Those who cannot deliver, they don't make the short list. So that was a significant challenge for us and for them, considering the topology we're dealing with.
No, and I definitely think some of the topology issues were things that we had to get our heads around in terms of, you know, those technical requirements. But I mean, for us, I just think the challenges became very exciting. You know, low latency networks, multi-service platforms, and things that we're building. So you know, I think it is that we're in the market, we're building, and understanding the requirements and making the changes along the way. Also with Itron, to make sure that the scalability is going to be there, and it's going to be robust and absolutely well tested, double tested by the time we get in the field. Jeff or Jennifer, I don't know if there's anything else, and we've got Felix who leads this business for us from a product management side, who lives and breathes the 24/7, quite frankly. So, Felix, I just want to make sure people knew you, and you'll get swarmed later. But anything else that we missed? I think.
Maybe
Jen?
one thing, and Dave alluded to it, I mean, given sort of the timeline requirements, I think thinking through the transition, using the aspects of modularity and the interfaces between the two systems was definitely some creative work that was done across the team to come up with how do you get phase one out to meet the initial requirements, so that it's not all a slam dunk day one, but then, incrementally how do you evolve that, leveraging some of the modularity and some of the, interfaces that we've defined across the two systems. Those have to stand the test of time. So I think that was very good work across the entire team to kind of just map that out, and everybody knew what the end goal was. And if you had unlimited time, you could get there, obviously fully standards-based, et cetera, but you have to take this in chunks that are consumable by the operations team, so we had to get a buy-off from the operations team in each of those chunks, and that's the collaborative environment that I think really helped that discussion.
And I would just finish this up by applauding Itron and recognizing the fact that they know that the traditional legacy AMI networks couldn't perform peer-to-peer connectivity in the field while you're actually trying to have meters talking out to a network at the same time. And so Philip and his team, great team, actually recognized that and went out to the marketplace. They were already there and brought Cisco to the table with us to get us that low latent, high bandwidth network.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions?
Quick question for Dave, and I'd be happy to hear from the suppliers too. You talked about going back to 2005 and starting your project conceptually in 2005. Can you talk about what's changed in, I mean, obviously you've had a lot of scope enhancements since then, but what have you talked about the TCO models that you've been keeping? Are there things that have changed in the last few years that have improved your TCO models in BC Hydro? And I'm happy to hear the suppliers comment on the same question.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we first embarked on this project, it was about revenue protection. We had $100 million. We wanted to see if we can actually catch the folks out there stealing power from the electric utility. This is in 2005. We looked at this capital request and we thought, there's probably more to it than actually catching the bad guys stealing power from us to grow these interesting plants in the province of BC. So we said, well, why don't we look at everything else? Like we heard about AMI, moving from AMR, we heard about this thing called the smart grid, and so we opened up our books to the vendors and starting to design our solution with them before we went back to the market in terms of procurement exercise, saying, what do you think we can do over the next 20 years? So work with us, let us know, and I'll write a business case for 20 years. And with that came along distribution system metering, hanging meters on transformers, putting meters outside substation fences and feeders. Having peer-to-peer connectivity, all of these things that I'm talking about today that didn't exist, it was the fact that I had a chance to work with the technology vendors. Just like Southern California did in their evolution over to the AMI market, we did the same thing back from 2005 to 2007 when we got into the joint solution design workshops with our vendors. And we're here today on account of us working together in academia and in standards groups and in other bodies.
I'm glad you're asking about total cost of ownership, because I think that it's one of the concepts that is so important, particularly at a time in which everybody's talking about, some shiny new feature, where we aren't really addressing what the long-term cost of keeping a system operating at an excellent level is. And, speaking from a particular knothole of the history of Itron, I think it's incredibly important for us to focus on a goal that says, why isn't operating a smart grid network just like operating an existing computer network, and why can't we standardize the tools and approaches and the software that we use for managing the networks that we are operating today? Why is it that we would build multiple organizations within the utility or any other entity when there's so much commonality and concern about how these networks operate, which again, if you believe in that model, drives you towards Cisco and large-scale global network providers that really have a deep understanding about what the broad issues of network management and scalability are, because I think that is going to become the pressing issue as we move through a period of time in which our large customers are now implementing millions and millions of meters. And by the way, small customers are implementing thousands of meters. Now they've gotten to the end of the implementation. It's nice to hear Dave's got the operations side. You have to be careful what you ask for. We now have a 7x24 system that's generating tremendous amounts of data. What's that going to feel like for 20 years is going to become a pressing issue, and I think there's a tremendous amount for us to gain from working with companies that have deep experience in those types of issues.
Well, absolutely. I mean, the TCO issues are in context of how the whole deployments are going to roll out. For us, historically, you know, you're not going to optimize if you're running many different kinds of networks. The opportunity for convergence and consolidation and multi-service platforms gives you a new kind of a TCO, both to enable what happens on the operational side and create efficiencies there, and also new innovation. So we're very much focused on, we love technology, but we want to meet the business needs. So, you know, Jeff spends a lot of his time, yes, in the depths of the architecture and the technical issues, but they are all mapped to the use cases and the business models. And if we get that right and we show how do we drive a converged, intelligent network to enable the operational efficiencies of today and tomorrow as the evolution happens and these new business models, that becomes very exciting in a world where there's a lot, you live the pressure every day. The lights have to go on, consumers want the rates to be low. But that has to get optimized, and I think that's the value that we brought in combining the architecture with the use cases. On top of that, and a lot of you came to our the Global Energy Summit, Philip was there and spoke quite a bit as well, but the opportunity for Cisco driving our model that we call Gridonomics, which is taking the technology architecture, the economic models, policy, regulation, and standards, and showing how do you create the synergies and investments from maybe what you do a little bit on the enterprise with the operational side, how do you create the synergies and optimize, and then understand the timing for those investments to really meet the business goals. Because you can say this is the best box in the world, but if it's not meeting those business goals, you've got numbers you've got to meet, and quality of service and customer satisfaction ratings, all that needs to come together. And I think the value of an intelligent network and a platform is that we can drive that, we can show that both at a technology level with security architecture and new tools and applications over a multi-service network and platform. We did that for the telecommunications industry, and their telecommunications is very different from the utilities. We don't get them mixed up at all. But this is what's core to Cisco's business. This is why what we're doing in this space is very core. It's routing, switching, and it's these platform approach and intelligent networks. We took over $600 billion out of cost when we went through this transformation of taking siloed network capabilities with all the same infrastructure, overlapping, not creating the synergies, creating multi-service platforms. And I think there's a great opportunity to do it here and unleash the innovation and the excitement that we have around things like electric vehicles and what consumers want, because that's what you're going to be responding to. What are consumers buying? How do they want their power? Do they want more green power? How many electric vehicles are going to be in their driveways?